Ladies and gentlemen, FCAT just gave us 54321, which says that we should be broadcasting live. This is a joint meeting of the Sunderland Board of Selectmen and Sunderland Finance Committee, budget hearing specifically with the Highway Department and later the Police Department. And again, these are our budget hearings, as we've tried in years past and been successful in some years and not so much in others. We have a budget week and then we have a business week. So this is our budget week, yesterday being a holiday. We chose to schedule this for Tuesday to keep on track with the budget process. So Finance Committee is here, Alex, Mark, new guy, Sean, and George is gonna start right off the bat. You guys have anything you wanna say before we roll into the budget?
Let her rip. Go, Scott.
Okay, George, come on up one row and let's talk about snow and ice and overtime and all that stuff. Potholes. What's on?
Salt. We need an
Salt.
in-depth salt discussion.
So George Emery's a highway superintendent now, a year or so. And doing
A year?
a year or so.
Yeah, more
That's what I said. 2 years
1 year
or so.
seems-
Oh, wow. Going on 6?
That's right.
Oh, 4. Seems like 6.
It's all a blur at this point.
It is all a blur.
So George, you want to give us a budget 101 and then any particular areas around capital and then maybe also a brief overview of projected projects going forward.
Okay, snow and ice, for the wages, we're down about $2,900, so we'll probably have to ask for a little bit more on the wage part of it. The snow and ice expense line, we're about almost 19,000 there. That's still pretty good that'll be good for a while.
Okay.
I think I've got a couple loads of salt that we gotta take out of that still. That's another 4,000 or so
And again, you're talking about snow and ice in the current year.
current.
And again, to remind people, we are allowed to deficit spend, we appropriate every year. We're allowed to deficit spend based on the winter, and then of those deficit spending, there's a request, the process is, a request comes from the highway superintendent, goes to the finance committee and the board. Value is allowed, and then that value essentially is backfilled at town meeting. So about 2,900 right now in wages, George,
Yes.
and about 19K in materials.
Expenses and materials, yeah.
Okay, great. So how about next year?
Next year, I didn't put anything else extra in there, cause I wasn't sure what, numbers you guys were thinking, so I kinda left it blank, and left it the same, so.
Hasn't been increased in the, excuse me, I'm sorry, Matt.
Couple of years.
It hasn't been increased in a couple of years, but I know the board remembers this, but if there are any new members of the finance committee, snow and ice, once there's an appropriation, the appropriation can't be lowered in a future fiscal year. So once you increase the snow and ice budget, it has to stay at that level or greater into the future. That's not our rule.
Well, no,
That's not our
state
rule.
rule.
That's a state
And it's been
rule.
a strategy too, it's been a strategy over the leaner years of 7, 8, 9, 10 to keep that as low as possible. I do remember in the last 2 cycles having incremental gains primarily out of the material costs.
Yeah.
And not significant, but incremental gains.
Yeah, we've been adding to it.
Yeah, again, it makes you wonder on some level if it's by adding a little bit to at least keep some pace, keeps us away from deficit spending. And there have been years where, we've been $101,000 in deficit based on the winter and the methods.
Or more.
Or more. And in the last handful of years, it's been very different.
Yeah, it has.
George?
Ones that's hard to predict too. with
That's
the weather.
exactly right.
So,
Exactly right. So you wanna go down the garage expenses, write down your proposal, George?
Yep, highway garage, we level funded it, that includes basically the heat for the garage and electricity and lights and stuff like that, so that would be level funded. Tree warden expense, we kept the same, 7,500. Highway super wages, I upped that a little bit, cause we were gonna try to reinstate all of our hours this
Mhm.
year. we're presently working 38 hours and we wanna increase it to 40. It's been, I think, 4 or 5 years since it's been up to 40 hours, so.
That would, FY09 was the last year that it was at 40, yeah.
So we'd like to try to reinstate that this year if we possibly could. Secretarial wages are about the same, or they are the same, I should say. Highway labor wages, that was increased some due to the reinstatement of the 40 hours. Seasonal wages, I raised it by $240 to make it an even 4,000, so I can use 2,000 before July 1st and then 2,000 after, so it gives me enough to keep them going till at least the end of August.
Okay.
So that's why I upped that.
Oh, yeah, spans the year, sure.
Labor overtime, left that the same. Let's see, department expense, raised that up $500 due to fuel cost increases that we've been having. It should hopefully cover it. And everything else pretty much level funded.
So on your draft,
The highway superintendent did submit justification for the hours reinstatement. Do you have a copy of that with you, and would you like to go over the justification for the reinstatement of hours?
I'm asking for the reinstatement of hours for the highway department. The total hours, the week would be 2.5 hours added to make a 40-hour week. Actually, it's 2 hours. The total for the increase would be $7,801.30. The total for the laborers would be $4,490.20. Highway superintendent is $3,311.10. This would help to get projects throughout the year done in a timely manner. The state and the federal government are passing all these new mandates, such as new reflectivity sign replacements, so we're gonna have to start replacing signs as we go now. I'm gonna start with some of the stop signs and the warning signs and stuff like that, the major ones first, and then we've got an order going in at the end of this month. We got it through, the COG did a large quantity order through a company out in Ohio, I think it's Ohio, somewhere out that way, and we got a better discount. So it'll all be shipped to Whately now, and we'll just go and put our signs up in there to do it 3 times a year now, so.
nice.
So we'll get our signs at a little cheaper cost.
Was that, if I could, was that part of the bulk purchasing or something they
Bulk
put?
purchasing, something new that us highway superintendents got together, and we asked Andrea to,
Yeah.
over at the FRCOG to do, and they structured something, had a few companies bid on it,
That's good.
so that'll be good. So we'll have to inventory all the signs and keep logs on when they're put up and how long they've been up for, and retesting them, that fun stuff.
Test the
so.
sign?
Yeah, basically.
Reflectivity.
There's a couple different ways to test them. You can buy
Reflectivity.
the reflective meter, which is thousands of dollars, or you take a older person and take them for a ride at night and see how they can see it.
Volunteer.
Senior tax
That's the
write-off.
scientific
That's right.
method,
Like,
right?
that's the way they do it, so.
Hey, the senior work off.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Go
So,
for a ride at night.
That's pretty
You'd
much.
be quiet in the back of the room there.
you'll be having new projects coming up because of the
Have cat
GIS
people.
implementation too, right? With
Yeah.
inventorying storm drains and things like that.
No, it's true, like
And
all
And
those
roads,
points
and,
dump.
yeah, and road,
Huh?
Especially if you try to land an airplane.
Yeah.
Geographic information system.
That should be a one-time thing too, once we get
Yeah, once you get it in there,
base
it's
done, right?
done, yeah.
it will.
We're gonna be doing a bunch more basins this year, hopefully. We did, I think, 12 or 14 this year, and did some new drainage up on Park Road, a new catch swale, and a new basin going across the road to cure some water problems we had up there in the past, so. Been pretty busy this summer.
That's good, I'm glad to hear that. This is the inevitable, this is the twice-a-year check on the mountain roads too, how do
Yeah.
they do?
We got a few things to do in the spring,
Yep.
and when things thaw out to do up there to get things back to reasonable passable, so.
That's the goal, right?
Yep.
FinCom, you got questions?
Yeah, I have a question about the first budget sheet where it says FY 2013 expended. Is that also just partway through that year? Because those all seem low.
Yes, it must be.
Yeah, it's like about half of the amount,
Yep.
yeah,
Sorry about that.
probably up to the end of that fiscal year or something.
Just the percent expended on like the highway garage, it just looks like it's half year information.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
doesn't look
good
like the
point.
full year.
Well, I think we should reject the submittal, please.
I just wanna know why, that's all.
No, I'm serious.
Uh-huh.
I think about the application, you know, it's FAFSA season. God forbid you miss a box. It comes right out.
If you don't
Yeah,
ask the
George, if you
question,
could just
you don't know
update
the
that.
answer.
I agree.
Oh,
You're absolutely right.
I can see how that would have happened too. You run the report for the mid-year date for a prior year, and that's exactly what you're gonna get. You're not gonna
Right,
get
you're only
the
getting
full
that
year.
calendar year.
That makes great sense.
It seems like this is gonna be a
Actually-
tough year for potholes too,
Yeah,
based
they're
on what I'm
popping up
seeing
all
out
over the
there.
place.
yeah,
Yeah,
because of
over
the,
West Springfield.
a lot of wild swings in temperature, I know, so I know Belchertown's a mess.
It don't take much with the temperature.
Yeah.
Pushes everything up and out.
Are we still working on those?
And I know the lower end of Plumtree always gets, you can feel the, you know,
Little ripples coming.
yeah, every year in the wintertime, once that freezes.
George, anything we should know about going into this budget cycle? Not so much this season, but this budget cycle? I don't see a capital request. All right?
Yeah, there's some in there.
Oh, sorry, missed it. I was in the wrong column. Wrong tab. Okay, you wanna go through the capital, George?
One capital request would be for 20,000 for catch basin repairs.
Okay.
We had that a couple years ago. Went that up and get another 20 additional. We did 90% of the work ourselves. We hired an excavator, or a guy with a backhoe to come in and dig all the holes for us, but we were working with him side by side, installing them and rebuilding them. So saved quite a bit of money doing that.
You find they're all about the same vintage, same
okay.
state
Yeah, a lot
same
of-
state of need?
A lot of block, a lot of brick,
Yep.
so they're pretty, some of them are pretty bad.
Yep.
So we put, instead of rebuilding out of block, we bought precast basins and put them in. They're a lot cheaper in the long run, less man hours.
No grouts or,
And each basin is cheaper to buy pre-built than it is to buy block.
isn't that interesting? So 20,000 for catch basin? Got paving and repair to Swampfield Drive,
That
3,500?
one's, the cost was a mistake, I never changed it.
Got it.
The original one from last year, this was on last year's, was 61,000.
Uh-huh,
That was to have it milled up.
Yep.
Put a new base down and then repave it. The cost was 61,000 last year, so I'm assuming it's gonna be a little bit more.
okay. So this 3,500 here is,
Yeah, that's-
ignore this
that's-
sheet.
Ignore that cost.
Got it.
I
and
caught
the-
that today when I was looking at it.
But the attachment does show the 61,000,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Say that was a pretty damn good price.
I was looking through them today and I'm like, that's not right.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Or you get 2 feet of
Go ahead, Mark.
What's going on, like, with the solar project, and are they gonna use Swampfield Drive, or
Good
And would
question,
they-
actually.
put the big trucks coming down? Let's say you fix the road, and then a year later, they're driving down there with tractor trailers. Is there any idea
I
what
would think
this-
that the paving would have to be scheduled after construction.
Probably would be based on the way things go anyway, because they're gonna try to get those things in as soon as possible,
They have to have them in by the end of June, so.
right?
Okay.
So,
Will they be held accountable for any mess they make? Any cost, more damage to something that already is, they be held by contract to. I'm just wondering.
no, you're right. The short answer is, yes, if it's collateral outside of the scope. That's part of the construction documents. That's a great question. You know, if you dig the road up on the way in to set your panels, you know, what's the liability? Liability is, you know, they break it, they own it.
Mhm.
So they're starting up this spring?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I think the completion is June 1st or June 30th.
It's June 30th.
June
Would
30th.
have to be, yep.
So your question's spot on. Why would you go about doing new road construction only to have large equipment heading up there? Good question, Mark.
I'll leave now.
Although, you know, in reality, the equipment that goes up there is probably not gonna be much worse than buses. I mean, buses are pretty bad too, so, you know, when you think about it.
So I got $3,500 for radios, George?
Yeah, some of our radio equipment's starting to get, pretty tired. We're constantly trying to fix it and put new parts on it, and it's just starting to get tired. So a lot of times.
Cab radios and base
Yeah,
station?
Yeah, cab radio and base station, basically the truck radios and stuff like that.
Do you have any idea how old that equipment is? I don't recall that ever being requested for highway, well, in my
I have no idea.
tenure, so it's been a while, long
Could've
time.
started as a gift 30 years ago, who knows?
It could have. Okay.
Got a holder in front of me.
The current holders we have now, one's I think a 1985, the other one's an 87. One of them was purchased to be a parts vehicle, and then we ended up, the last superintendent that was here ended up starting to rebuild one of the motors, and I finished it when I started. So we've been running both of them. We've repaired them quite a bit, and the cost for parts is very expensive on these.
Uh-huh,
A lot of places we have to get, the parts come mainly from Canada.
uh-huh.
There's a company out east that sells them, because you gotta go through the salesman
Yeah.
down there, and then they get them from Canada and ship them to us. So things are quite expensive on those.
Is that still a piece of equipment by design that you're comfortable with, or is there an
Um,
alternative out there to do
There's
this
a
kind of
couple
work?
alternatives out there that I've been looking at, and they're all right around the same price. We use it to street sweep, we use it to mow, we use it to plow sidewalks. We do about 4 miles of sidewalk with it, so it stays pretty busy.
Yeah.
It's a good piece of equipment.
Have you looked at the Bobcat skid steers or skid steers?
I've been looking at a bunch of different options and stuff.
The hydraulic attachments.
Yeah, there's a few things out there that have caught my eye, but some of the attachments that we have, we'd have to buy all the attachments again,
Oh,
so that adds to the price. I mean, we have 2 brooms, we have
I
a
see.
mower, we have, a V-plow, a snow blower, and a power angle plow for those.
so by the time you get done with the vehicle and then outfitting it,
You're.
it's a whole different
Yeah.
costs.
Yep,
I see
you're
what
probably
you're
up
saying.
around 175 after that, 150.
Yeah, it's just interesting,
Yeah.
you know, because the holders, I guess over time, I don't know if we've had good luck with them or bad luck, but, you know, if they're hard to get parts for now, they're gonna be hard to get parts for a long time.
It's not gonna get any
The
better.
older ones are not making the parts for much anymore. I mean, if you do find one, you're paying a lot for the old parts.
Uh-huh.
The newer ones, they say they're fairly easy to get parts for, but there's another, couple models out there that some of the parts you can buy right from Cowan's, so I'm looking towards some of those, and they say they can take our attachments and retrofit them to the new ones, so I've been looking into that. See if we can get something like that.
Interesting. The last one you got, George,
Generator.
excuse me,
We're
generator.
still running a 5 kW generator.
Yep.
In the town garage. They do not run our fuel pumps. They basically run the garage door, some lights, and I think the office computer maybe.
That's probably it.
Yeah, very much on it.
So having looked at it with you, that's essentially a residential connection.
Yeah, it's an old military generator, I think, I probably got for surplus
Yep.
years ago.
Yep.
So.
Okay.
How big a
coming-
generator you gonna need, George?
I think a 15,000, 10 kW.
15K?
Yeah, somewhere around there. It's a 3-phase in our building, so that jacked the price up with a generator.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
What do you use 3-phase for the,
I don't know why there's 3-phase in that building.
is there anything that they need 3-phase for, Scott, for?
Well, they do distribution that way because of the line available on the street. It
I
helps,
know,
it
but
helps
is
with
there-
little,
But is there a reason why they would need three-phase?
on the generator,
Yeah,
yeah, you would wanna have, well, you could
Or
audit, you could audit the load,
yeah, what are they using it for?
probably the garage door openers, at the very most, those are probably three-phase units.
Really?
It's easy to look at, if you don't have a three-phase generator now, then you don't have to replace it with one, but you may wanna consider some of those loads. The fuel,
No, that's what I said, you know, what are you running, what would need three-phase, just,
Yeah.
The
that would
fuel
be
pumps don't
about
need
it.
three-phase, right?
Fuel pumps don't,
I don't think
air
so.
conditioning does not,
the,
process equipment, maybe the compressor,
Any
Compressor and a
machining
welder
equipment?
maybe. Be nice to have a welder in case something happened during, you know, if we did have loose power and we needed it, but, you know, it's not necessary, I guess.
but now the welders are high frequency,
Truck mount, yeah, like your
frequency
truck
load,
mount.
yeah, exactly. We could look at that, see if three-phase is really a requirement
Yeah.
based on the load.
yeah, cause once you get three-phase, your price just went
Yeah.
sky high.
Yeah,
Yep.
it went up a ton,
Oh, yeah, I
couldn't believe it.
And, I guess you'd have to ask why, how big are the motors for the garage door opener?
Probably one horse for the overhead doors. But again, I'm guessing, the rest of the building,
Don't really need three-phase for that.
Oh. Not
Is
an
there, like,
$8,000
machine
motor, right, Mr. Ziner?
That's the only thing I
An
can.
$8,000, a 364 TS frame motor, 900 RPM, huh?
yeah, that's what we're talking about.
See?
It still sounds expensive for a generator.
Yeah.
And if we have three-phase there and there's no need to have three-phase, then why we spend that extra money?
Right. That's a good point. Okay. Where you just sneak a cord through the public safety complex.
How about that?
Bobby, I heard it, Chief Gilbert are too cheap.
Yeah.
They'd cut that extension cord.
George, you got these ships all
So
the way
one of the things is on the, if I could, back on Swampville Road and not using chapter 90 funds, cause it's not
not a public way.
so, did we have the discussion why it's not a public way, and do we want it to make a public way?
I guess it would, the discussion on downside, if there was one. I mean, we already essentially manage it, repair it, et cetera. So if it becomes available for chapter 90 money, in particular Swampfield and the emergency road, the emergency exit, emergency entrance.
Well, I wouldn't make that a town road, but I would make the,
The main drive one.
yeah, and not even the entire parking lot,
Just their road.
yeah, just the,
I think we should actually have the
we
discussion.
should have the discussion, I mean, we
Right.
should talk to the school committee and see if there's any, I guess the only problem I would have, and I guess we'd have to look at the assessor's map, is if it's if the town owns all the land along the road.
Good point.
As
Well,
long as
it
it
was something
does,
to do with the people that gave the land to the town or something.
There
Put
are
something
private
in.
property abutters at the beginning of the
Those
road.
two houses.
Yeah, there's also an empty lot, I believe, right?
Farm lot.
That's fire.
Yeah, the
Yep.
farm lot, yes.
so we should look at it.
Yeah.
Okay. Field is public way. Okay. Questions for George? Okay, George, I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Hopefully you don't have to go out tonight.
Yeah, hopefully not.
There's no snow.
Time will tell.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, George?
Okay, next up we got Chief Gilbert and, the budget request for the Sunderland Police Department. Sunderland Police? I know, my nose is getting clogged and it's just, anyway. Hi, Chief. Hi. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Sure.
So we've got a spreadsheet in front of us, 15 budget request. We've got some capital in front as well, and you brought some pictures to show us.
Actually, what that is, I've been working on a PowerPoint presentation for the budget needs that I would like to go over with you.
Okay.
That's, this, what I have, the PowerPoint that I've worked on and will show you is asking the board and the town to consider increases in the FY budget, FY15 budget. I did submit a level funded budget, except for where the wages, because we are in the middle of negotiations. I didn't want to plug in any numbers for that reason.
Fair. We're in the middle of negotiations.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So wages, I would need to wait on because of that. And then the other items, like I said, are level funded.
Okay. Chief, when we get actually to this part of the presentation, if we could go full screen with it. We just got this from FCAT. It's so big.
Let me see if I can do that for you. I think I can.
It's right next to the sliding bar, chief.
If I go,
Go down.
On the bottom, right? All right.
Oh, that's too complicated.
wait a minute. Where?
From beginning?
You're gonna start a slideshow now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Click.
So talk as you go.
Nice.
Aw,
Oh, wait a minute.
Okay, is that better?
no, very
Thanks,
nice.
FCAT.
How do you hide the notes pane?
Actually.
No, it's not up.
Oh, good.
Open.
Okay.
Okay, so what and I have notes to go with this. Okay, so as police, our focus is to keep the peace, enforce the law, prevent crime, reduce the harmful effects of crime, and reduce the fear of crime. We must come together in partnership to positively impact the safety and quality of life for the people who live, work, and visit in the town of Sunderland. And go to next. Oh, I see what it's doing. It's one behind. How do I?
You can click the back arrow. You want to go back to the first slide?
Or forward a slide.
Or forward a slide?
Forward a slide.
H.
Okay.
Here you go.
Okay, so,
Yep, one more, Chief.
there we go. Okay.
It's always going to be one ahead of you.
Oh, okay.
You can read right from.
Okay, so for proper protection, safety, and coverage, we need at least one additional full-time officer minimum. Present overtime budget is insufficient to cover current open available hours and unfunded mandated training. Our current fuel budget does not adequately cover what we need to patrol our town and complete our duties. Radar costs anticipated to increase due to new service contract for next fiscal year. Increased costs of service anticipated for weapons maintenance and range supplies, including ammunition, cruiser maintenance costs, radio service contract. Okay, those are the key points. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, most current data, the national average local police operating costs for fiscal year '07 were $116,500 per sworn officer and $260 per resident. Sunderland has 5 full-time officers, including the chief. 2010 census shows population of 3,684. However, total population for Sunderland fluctuates based upon total number of residents living in the rental units, apartments in town. Best estimate is 4,284. Because of the apartment complexes that we have, and the census is not accurate. And there's a lot of transient, well, not a lot, but there's a number of transients, and there's a population of students and others who live in the apartments who are not on the lease, and we don't know that they're there. So this would be an estimate for the population. And as you can see, 5 officers at 116,500 is 582,500. And for the 3684 residents, 957,840. What I also did too is I attached the links
to these if you wanted to go to those to see where I'm getting the information. Most current Bureau of Justice statistics from '08 shows an average of 2.3 full-time officers per 1,000 residents. Town population 3684. That would equal 8.47 full-time officers. The Department of Justice FBI statistics on crime in the United States shows that nationally, cities with less than 10,000 residents reported an average of 3.5 full-time officers per 1,000 inhabitants. However, in New England, the average was 3 full-time officers per 1,000.
We're just more peaceful here.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the things I was wondering, like, I'd like to see the crime statistics split up by region too, and compare.
The current shift schedules with 5 full-time officers and our part-time officers does not allow 2 officers per shift 24/7. With administrative, court, and investigative burdens, our full-time officers are often prevented from providing proactive patrols and traffic enforcement. And, oh, that's hard to see, huh? This is, actually, I forgot my glasses. I can't even see myself. This is on
Zoom
crime,
in a little there. You won't get the whole thing, but at least you'll be able to maybe read it.
on this. Oh,
The
zoom,
magnifying.
zoom on slide. Shoot, I apologize for this. This is basically what,
It says crime and no crime incidents.
right,
Not bad, huh? That's what glasses, that's what glasses will do.
I don't know if what you're reading is true or not, Margaret. You could be saying anything.
We can't read it either.
They'll magnify that part.
Oh,
There you go.
there we go, thank you.
You have to use those
Crime
young-
and no crime incidents,
young
very good,
eyes.
Margaret.
Not
Can I have your
bad, huh?
glasses?
Yeah, sure.
Not including training or court appearances. So what this is just, the number of officers, not the number of officers, the number of incidents that happen on certain days and times. And it goes through, from midnight till, all the way through.
What are the red areas?
The red areas,
And you get that green pattern in there too.
yeah, there's green, yellow, hang on,
Is that showing like your peaks?
can I go over here?
Yep, you just click it and just move it over.
Drag it to the right. There you go.
There we go. So the green indicates times when there are 2 officers on duty. So, there. Yellow indicates time when there's 1 officer on duty, and red indicates when there are no officers on duty.
But on
So-
duty, Chief, do you need 2 officers patrolling or
Yes,
2 on the road?
that's correct. Yeah. It's not very often, as you can see. The yellow indicates when there's 1, which is the majority of our time, when there's only 1 officer on duty.
Just got a question, do you have like a corresponding graph that shows when the most calls are in relation to the staffing?
I do, what did I just do? Whoa, I didn't wanna do that. Go back. Okay, that was, yeah,
That was a current.
is this?
Arrest by time of day.
Arrests by time of day.
Okay, this I can. Yeah. Okay, that's right. So right there, this is arrest by time of day. And the totals are over to the right. Let me go down and the green indicates when, again, 2 officers on duty, 1, and no officers on duty.
So
And
you
then
have to
the-
assume that arrests are being made by state police
State police, right, in those times.
or neighboring communities' police or something.
And not neighboring police, state police,
State
yes.
police, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
It's amazing, there's actually arrests done on Sunday.
Yeah.
We've been asked many times, why do we have police patrols on Sunday? Because no
right.
one commits a crime on Sunday.
Yep, I remember the conversation, actually, one of them was in this room.
Sure, crime
Yeah,
takes a
nothing
break
happens on
Sundays.
Sunday. Right.
Okay, this would be the shift coverage with one additional full-time officer. And green indicates, again, where there are 2 officers on duty, indicates when there's 1. The yellow is when there's 1 on duty. So a significant amount of time when there is only 1 on duty.
Do you have hours on these charts starting at midnight? Oh, 1 AM,
1
okay.
a.m.
All right.
Okay, then, just some facts. According to the National Law Enforcement Officer Memorial Fund, a total of 1,539 law enforcement officers died in the line of duty during the past 10 years, an average of 1 death every 57 hours, or 154 per year. There were 120 law enforcement officers killed in 2012. On average, over the last decade, there have been 58,261 assaults against law enforcement officers each year, resulting in 15,658 injuries. This does not include other injuries incurred on the job, such as from lifting or falls. And these are reported injuries also. There are a number of injuries that are not reported. I don't have that number. So additional full-time officer, and why? Community and officer safety is of the utmost importance. If officers are working alone and are injured or killed, how do we know? Needed to ensure officer safety 24/7, especially on certain calls, i.e. domestics, drug-related calls on location, as well as traffic stops, major motor vehicle crashes and suicide calls, as these types of major crimes often lead to officer injuries. I'll give you a couple examples. One is as far as a drug-related call. We had an individual that we assisted apprehending who was right here in Sunderland at a residence, he had overdosed his significant other. She died. And very unfortunately, she was pregnant. He was on the run. We don't know what was gonna happen. We had a number of officers out for, and if it had been just one officer, it would have been a tough call for that one officer to apprehend that individual, because he was also with a group of people in that residence. Another thing was where I actually dealt with an individual who was operating under the influence. He became suicidal. On the way to the hospital, myself and the EMT in the back and also the driver of the ambulance had to stop the ambulance, and the 3 of us had to fight him, and it was a tough fight. And it took a while. So and the drug-related calls are increasing. I don't know if you've seen recently or read also, heroin is rampant. And it's everywhere. We've had 3 deaths very recently, and the one woman I was just talking about, in Franklin County, just in the last month. It's on the rise, and we need to curtail it as best we can. But we need to investigate it and make the arrest. So, but also, an additional full-time officer needed as a second set of eyes and necessary as additional witness when dealing with certain types of calls. The same thing, domestics, drug-related, major crashes, and violent patients who we assist EMS. And like I said, each year drug-related and domestic calls has been increasing. Imperative need, as we are the primary first responders for EMS calls in town. We go to a large majority of the medicals. When the ambulance gets called out, fire department gets called out, we go. And a large majority of the time, we are the first ones on scene. We are certified first responders. Especially important as the move to South County EMS progresses and the ambulance will no longer be housed in town.
I'll take exception to that, chief. Take that right off.
Okay.
You lost all credibility when you put that line in there to me. Because now, not only are you gonna get better, you're gonna have full-time paramedic service that'll be here at average 20 minutes quicker than before. So with lines like that, chief, you're losing credibility with me, just to let you know.
Okay.
I don't know where that comes from and why you put that there, but that's a bad statement, chief.
Okay. What it is,
Chief, don't even try to defend it. Because the more you try to defend it, I'm gonna take it to task.
okay,
I'm telling you right now,
okay.
I'm very disappointed. Because you haven't been paying attention to what's been going on the last year plus.
An additional officer will allow an increase in the amount of citations Sunderland Police Department can accrue, leading to additional income for the department. 2010 census data shows 2,198 town residents commute to work every day. Of those, 1,650 are in private vehicles and 408 use public transportation. The remaining walk or use other means of transportation. These figures do not include persons or students commuting from apartments and or nearby towns that travel through Sunderland to work or school. The increase in the overtime budget would be asked for to cover contractual time off and hours when officers must make court appearances, unfunded mandated training, major incidents, holding over officers due to call volume. And it's just contractual time off used by current officers. Like I said, we need to have money set aside to still cover additional time off, court time, unfunded mandated training, till the end of the fiscal year. And that's just our patrol area, which is 30.82 miles. Our fuel budget was decreased by 50% in '09 from 20 to 10 and has remained relatively unchanged. Fiscal year 2013 budget allotted only $10,000 for fuel. Fuel prices have increased and changed in the last 4 years. Typical patrol route through Sunderland averages 30.82 miles. And we need to have proactive, not reactive patrols of our units. Need to increase fuel budget to, that's a typo there, 20,000, not 25. And then what I have on here is just the average of average miles, daily miles at 16 or 17 miles for the Crown Vics and 17 to 21 miles per gallon for the Tahoe. And the radar maintenance is due to increases in services fees and labor costs. Weapons maintenance and rate supplies due to increased service fees for weapons. It's paramount to keep the weapons in top operating condition and for safety. Due to increases in ammunition costs, which are constantly on the rise, and due to increased costs in training and range fees. Cruiser maintenance account, 3,500. Same account was 47,03. Maintenance includes, but is not limited to, oil changes, tire, brakes, tune-ups, exhausts, front-end parts alignments, state inspections, broken or worn-out parts. Parts and labor costs obviously have risen in the last 10 years. And it's just a breakdown of cruiser maintenance. The 04 that I drive has 140,000. And There's one with 82,036 and the Tahoe with 13,000. New tires needed in 2015 would be 3 of the cruisers. And projected brake pads. The radio service contract. In the long run, a radio service contract will give us better coverage for our aging radios and keep us up to date with our communication tools. New quote to be provided by New England Communications. A contract will cover at a minimum service calls and broken emergency equipment, including but not limited to blue lights, radio equipment, electrical issues, certain installations, and repair of equipment. So in summary, no one can argue against the idea that having more officers will provide us with the time and resources to better and more completely work with our partners in government, business, education, neighborhood groups to address the root causes of crime and keep our community safer. One more full-time cop minimum will allow our officers time to realistically assess and solve problems. We'll be able to improve our response time to calls for service, have the resources to more completely investigate more crimes, and improve the safety of our town and our officers overall. Increasing our overtime budget will help cover much-needed open shifts, contractual time off, and training. Increasing our fuel budget will ensure we are properly patrolling the town of Sunderland, able to run radar, make court appearances, and keep our town covered. Increasing service and labor costs mean we have to increase our weapons maintenance range, cruiser maintenance, begin and maintain a radar and radio service contract. These items will in turn ensure we have our equipment and tools to safely and effectively carry out our duties.
So Chief, you've got your spreadsheet here is the zero increase or level funded budget. And
Yes.
you've
It's
just
minimal increase,
minimal increase.
level service, right?
Level
Yes.
And so we just seen is a presentation about the potential needs or the needs for, is there an alternate budget that's been developed, or is this to identify in the form of a narrative?
There is a, does not include the wages
Right.
due to the negotiations, right? But this would show you the increases that I had.
Supported by the presentation.
Correct.
Okay. Can we take a look at the presented budget, not the presentation budget, but the presented budget? Again, there are some things in here that are specific to negotiations, and we were still waiting for things like cost of living increases from recommendations of the Personnel Committee. Questions of Finance Committee first about the presented budget, not the presentation.
Actually, I had a question about the cruiser maintenance line. I think you mentioned that it was 3,500 now, and here's at 6,000.
I believe it was, I have the,
That's sixes.
Because I think at some point you said it went down from 4,700 to 35,
to 35.
but this says 6,000.
I was just requesting the increase just for, due to the years of the vehicles, and maintaining the vehicles, and the maintenance of the vehicles.
I think to Alex's point, though, I think that maybe, Alex, it's 11 and 12 and 13 are all 6,000
Yeah, it's
still. Yeah,
going
it's been
back
level
to the
funded.
worksheet. Yeah.
This would be on the blue sheets.
Okay.
So it's showing that it has been.
Right, so I'm sorry, Alex, what do you? So, over the past few years, it's been
6, okay.
6,000, right?
So would you like it higher than 6, or? Because I think that's different than the numbers you mentioned.
Right. Scott, do you see on there, I'm not sure if I asked for increase in,
On the sheet that's submitted, chief, the blue sheet,
yes,
it looks like it's level funded at
It is.
6,000.
it is. And then it's also,
Okay.
The contract for, Chief, that you're asking for the radar and radio, how do you maintain your radar and radio now?
if something breaks down, then we hope that it's a low-cost repair. Radios, the radios that we have are getting older.
What's the age on those?
Do you know what the age on those, on the vehicle radios?
Most of those came in prior to me leaving, so at best 2004, and we went to IMAX.
So
10 years old?
8 to 10 years.
So,
So with the service contract, it's more or less an insurance. You pay a set fee, but then if anything breaks down or needs replacing, it would be at that cost. I've been in contact with New England Communications. I've tried to get one of the representatives up here. He says he's gonna try and be here, to look at what we have and what it would be for a service contract. Which would be, we pay a set fee, and then if we need them to replace or work on the radios, it would be in that fee.
so in essence, if we sign a contract with this company and something breaks down, they will either fix it or replace it.
That's right.
So would you run an analysis to determine how much has been spent outside of a contract and the cost for a contract, you know, prior to making a decision?
Sure.
Like say the last 2 or 3 years, how much have you spent to fix broken radios and radar? And how much will,
A minimum amount.
okay.
I don't have an exact cost, but I can tell you, we haven't spent or had to spend a lot.
Right, I understand that. My point is, for you to figure out, you know, if it is worth doing this contract, you need to know, at least, I mean, I would like to know how much we've spent in the last 3 or 4 years, as opposed to how much I would spend if I was to
Sure.
sign this contract.
Mhm.
Am I saving money by signing this contract, or can I just keep doing what I'm doing now? to
Right,
Hold
right.
things together with, you know, chewing gum and,
I understand what you're saying.
Chewing gum and
Yeah.
duct tape.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be
I would need to know also what they would require for costs, for the contract. It might be where I'm like, no way I'm gonna pay that kind of money. So, and then do an analysis on how much we've spent. So a service contract may not work. This is questionable if I even am gonna require a radio service contract.
if your radios and radar at 10 years old, I mean, isn't it time for us to start thinking about replacing them? I mean, even if we don't sign this contract, I mean, say this contract, you know, is too expensive anyway. Isn't it time for us to start thinking about replacing, you know, equipment that are 10 years old?
A good question, I guess, what's the life cycle, the average life cycle of them?
Right.
Or is
10
there,
years
or
is
is
10
there
years.
a technology shift?
Yeah.
Right.
Technology.
Yeah, are they analog or digital? I would imagine I suspect they're analog, I would think,
They are,
right?
yeah.
Have they shifted over to digital? for that?
Some have.
Okay.
And a lot of the departments also have the MDTs, the mobile data terminals,
Yeah.
but those are
More
expensive.
expensive.
You're looking at like at least $4,000 per.
Is there like a service contract or something that goes with it too, or?
There would be.
Anything else? FinCom questions about what's presented? Okay. Discussion?
No, I've seen enough.
There's capital.
Capital, I'm just asking, to replace the, 04 Crown Vic. I was hoping to get 2 quotes. I have, right now, I believe you have a quote, in front of you, which is for $40,276. And that'll replace the 04, which is 10 years old. It's starting to chug along and rusting out. It'll definitely be more to maintain.
Sure.
Very high mileage.
So, Mr. Chair, I have a question. If we're so concerned about fuel cost, why are we speccing an 8-cylinder versus a 6-cylinder? When most of the time is spent idling, not, and we got 30 miles in town. Now, if I'm thinking my basic physics, that means I can go 60 miles an hour from one end of the town to the other, and how quick? So why do we need an 8-cylinder versus a 6-cylinder if we're concerned about, if, because I think it's a big question. If we're really concerned about cutting costs and being efficient, why do we need an 8-cylinder to drive the road to Sunderland?
We spent a pile of money on a 6-cylinder that was thousands of dollars of breaking down. It didn't hold up. The gas mileage hasn't been, if you look at the Tahoe, it's actually better than what the 6-cylinder Explorer was getting. They may not go 100,000 miles a year, especially with our mileage limitations, but they yet worked hard. And the old style rear wheel, having a basket versus symmetrical driveway wheel, blah, 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 they hold up a lot better, they last a lot longer, and you're probably talking, if you spec'd out a 6-cylinder, say a Caprice versus, which they don't make for the police, they make just a civilian model, it's not even nickels and dimes with the gas mileage, it's extremely close. But the maintenance was horrendous on that thing. There was almost $4,000 here in 1 year. Things were falling apart. I'm not saying every single 6-cylinder will do that. I own 6-cylinders that are great, but for a police car. But we could. I mean, there was an all-wheel drive Charger we were gonna look at. We didn't have a chance to even get the spec on that.
Well, the quote in there, it shows the 6-cylinder is a standard quote in there. In that quote that I looked at, the standard is a 6-cylinder, 3.6 6-cylinder.
They called it their administrative sedan. That was for like detectives or whatever, but when they put all the stuff in it, they said what they're stocking. You could get a 6 as a regular civilian Caprice, that wouldn't be a problem.
Well, you know, I guess you get back to the fundamental question, is if you really, if you're trying to save, if you continue to do the same thing that you're always doing, you're never gonna make progress. So what other options are out there? Are there other options out there?
Right.
And does a police cruiser have to be the police cruiser that your grandfather drove?
Right.
I don't know. But if we're doing the same thing over, and you're trying to save money, then, and not just money upfront costs, but long-term costs.
Well, real operating costs.
Real operating costs, right.
Yep.
I don't see gas prices going down.
No. Yeah.
No,
Definitely not gonna be going down.
they're not going down.
What about the new Explorers? Do they have can you get the EcoBoost, that 6-cylinder on that one?
You can get a 6-cylinder that's supposedly pushing around the same horsepower as
Right.
I don't,
And the mileage is lower, I know that.
the jury's out, those just came out, so I don't like first-year models because they usually make hundreds of changes after they see all the complaints, so.
They're not making the Explorer anymore, the 6-cylinder Explorer, I don't believe. It's called the Interceptor.
Yeah.
There's the Interceptor sedan and the Interceptor SUV, a smaller version.
Yeah, because the other one's
I
based off the
believe
Taurus,
6-cylinder,
right?
though. I'm sorry,
I
what?
think the sedan's based off the Taurus, and then they got the Explorer, right?
I think
Right.
you're right.
Yeah, because I know that EcoBoost 6 has been out for a few years now.
Yeah, it's been a couple.
Yeah.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Just, I believe this is at least the third year in a row the chief has asked about adding an additional full-time officer. I'm just not sure what the process is. I mean, we've heard it in front of the finance committee for 3 years, and, you know, we each can make our own decisions how we feel about it, but what happens now? I mean, it's up to the selectmen to decide whether to put this as an item on the warrant, or what happens to this,
Well, through the whole budget process, the final number, including the number, let me back up, the final number will be developed. And that number will be taken through the consideration of either policies or expansion of programs, in this case here, staffing. And then the budget process we would go through, and that includes working with the finance committee about short-term affordability, long-term affordability, department needs, town needs. So it's a discussion, as you said, Mark, that's been on the table a couple of years now. This is probably the most detailed of the presentations that we've seen, and I suspect because it has been a couple of years, we're seeing a fair amount more in the way of information on this year. It wasn't particularly a yes/no answer, but that's kind of the process.
okay, but I'm still not sure what happens to it after tonight.
Sure.
And-
We'll continue to work with the chief
You just continue
Yeah.
with it, okay.
and understand with our collective deliberations about that affordability.
Okay.
Other questions for the chief? Capital, we got a cruiser, we got a gun rack. $1,200, the gun rack, doing capital. I know it lasts more than 3 years, but it's $1,200.
Is the contract for the cruiser?
For one replacement. This is gonna retire in 2004, right?
That's correct.
This is not to add a vehicle.
Right.
What are the pressures, chief, if I could go back, what are the pressures with having, added staff on, the soft costs? That is, one head count means negotiated uniforms, tools. Do we have a vehicle asset if we have a second an additional full-time officer? We have enough of those kinds of assets?
Mhm.
You know, I'm projecting forward. Say we hire Mark, and Mark says, listen, I've got all the credentials, I'm recently retired, I wanna do a second career. By the way, next year, I still need a cruiser, and. Is there an escalation? You know, when I hire somebody, invariably there's a truck involved.
Mhm. Well, due to the shifts and the different shifts, we would not need to add
Okay.
another cruiser.
Okay.
But your replacement cycle would go up.
Because
If you're saying that you need a second officer to be out patrolling, that means that car's gonna be out. And you just
Yeah.
discussed how many miles are gonna be run per vehicle, per shift. So your miles are gonna go up. So your miles goes up, you're gonna need to replace on a more
frequent level.
frequent
basis.
level.
Yep.
Right?
Yes,
So,
There'd be budget increases too, contractual primarily.
right.
Could I have any way of assessing the value of adding an officer? I mean, that is, do we have any way of, you know, the accounting? I mean, how do we, value the,
sir, cost benefit?
yes, of adding an officer? I mean,
Yeah.
and also, how do we know, or what do we look at on the other end when it comes to what the town gets, and by this I mean town safety?
Yep.
How do we know the improvement that we get by adding an extra officer? Frankly, I find myself very removed from a lot of, most of us, don't deal with, with the part, of society that the chief and the officer deal with.
Right.
I didn't know that heroin was, or cocaine, I don't know what you just said,
Heroin.
was on the rise, because I don't get into that kind of, because that doesn't touch me. But the question is, how do we, what will adding an extra officer do?
Right.
And will that help us stop this scrounge from spreading more into our society, our kids, and all that? Will it? I don't know. This is the kind of things I wrestle with. But if financially we can afford it, I think it behoves us as a town to do whatever we can to ensure that the safety of our citizens, are taken care of.
Now, from a purely philosophical perspective, it's certainly been the board's perspective, it's been the board's initiative and goals that have the public safety number one, whether it's law enforcement, public health, education. Those are all key components to a strong community. And we've been managing for a number of years now with limited resources, reduced resources, and that backed up against pent up demand. So we've seen over the course of the last 4 budget cycles in particular, we've endured those reductions. We're still clicking along at 0. So Francis, the long and short of that answer is the public safety is the primary reason that we're here. That's just the way it is. We have to actually allocate the resources that we've got, and so maybe this is a year for an increase of the police department, or maybe it's not. But to your point about statistics and it's hard. It's you can have run data, you can have arrest data, you can have census data, you can have all that stuff, but you could have a really, really tough year. You could have a really, really good year. I'm not sure about a cost benefit on something like staffing. Because really, in many ways, it's very reactive. Law enforcement, in many ways, in my opinion anyway, is reactive.
Francis's question is, I don't think you could put a qualitative number.
Yep.
And that's the problem, Francis.
Exactly. How do you quantify
But-
this?
But it's interesting because if you asked 2 years ago how would you increase safety in the town or whatever, I think I may have a different answer than I have today.
Yeah.
To me, if the chief was coming in with a superintendent of schools and a principal and say, I think we should put a resource officer in the school, and this is why, I'd like to have that conversation. But if you're talking about, as we can see all around us, I think you could put qualitative numbers to that about school safety. If you ask personally, if you ask me about law enforcement versus what's out there, I think today our young kids have more sense of hopelessness and lost than ever before. And I think that's one of the reasons that you see the drug use, in particular heroin, that's out there. And I think the district attorney and our local sheriff are working very hard on those problems. And I don't know how you take that sense of loss or loss of purpose. I don't know how you correct that. And by adding more police on the ground, are we correcting that problem, or are we just adding to that problem? And are we reacting to the problem of that hopelessness that's out there? I don't know the right answer, but I think it's a conversation that we should have. And I think it's much bigger than ourselves, but at some point you have to have that conversation. So I think your point's well taken. I don't necessarily, when I look at the presentation about a town of our size having 12 police officers, I look in Western Massachusetts and I love to see any town of 3,000, 4,000 people that have 12 police officers besides the town of Hadley. And they got so it'd be a very interesting conversation. What I got out of the presentation, the presentation was saying tonight to me, it's not necessarily better protection for the residents in town, but more protection for the officers. They want to have 2 members on shift for their protection. I think that's a different conversation also. That's what I got out of the presentation. They didn't talk about how we'd have more safety as a community, but it'd be more safety for the officers, which is a valid conversation to have as well, to me.
I think it is, as far as the officers being able to protect each other and on calls that they go on. I don't know what to say as far as the perception of, I have always, my first priority has been, will be, community safety and protecting and being concerned about the residents of Sunderland. That is my number one priority. And it's unfortunate if it's not seen that way or understood. I'm huge into community policing. I do what I can as far as the community policing, including the school. A large majority of the students at the elementary school know me. I make it a purpose to go there 2-3 times a week. Again, I just, the bottom line is my very main concern, number one concern and priority is the safety of everyone in Sunderland. And as the chief, am I concerned about the officer's safety? Absolutely. Sure. And that is a concern also. But again, I can't say it enough. My number one priority is a concern for everyone in town.
I'm not sure there's any difference between the safety of the officers and the safety of the community, because the officers are part of the community, and if for some reason there's, the officers are endangered during the call, I don't think the community is, at least in that area, will be that much safer. So I don't really see any dichotomy between the safety of the officers, and the safety of the community, because I think, the one goes with the other.
I'm not sure if a larger number, for example, we're fairly close, I believe, to Deerfield as far as number of calls, population, and so forth. And they have 9 full-time officers and 15 part-time. And I'm not sure if that's necessary. And that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for an additional, and part of that also is looking for the additional officer is to cover open shifts that we have open now. Not just to have 2 officers on 24/7. It's also to help cover the shifts that are open.
Which is also, a safety issue. It all
Sure.
Flows together.
Right. And that's the bottom line. It is a safety issue, and it is the safety for the residents of Sunderland.
Well, it'll certainly be a conversation that continues in not only this venue, but in other venues.
I just got one
Dave?
point about, more back to what you were asking about, how do we quantify? We always manage, and this says nothing to do with pro or against, adding an officer or anything. We always manage to quantify what something means when we cut something. So we need to be able to quantify it when we increase it. Because you can't tell me we can quantify it when we get rid of it, but we can't quantify it when we want to increase it. We have to be able to do it both ways.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
'Cause that was the one thing that kind of stuck out, that had which is totally separate from, pro or for, or against any one particular budget item,
No, that's actually an interesting perspective. I say it because we go down the list right to the pennies and then go, okay,
So
this is
what
where we're cutting.
We're gonna, right, well, we gotta be able to do the same process going the other direction, too.
Good point, David. Okay. Anything else for the chief? Then we have minutes to go over, and that'll be the extent of our meeting. A couple of very brief updates. Margaret's going to tell us all about Fort Myers, Florida.
Sunny.
Okay, sunny in 62, right?
It's always sunny in Florida.
There you go. Thanks so much, chief. Appreciate it. Thanks, Finance Committee. So it's about 2 weeks. We'll do this again. Thanks again. Okay, we have minutes here in front of us from January 6th. That was a public library hearing.
Yes, motion.
You have a motion on the minutes of January 6th. Second? Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0, please. And on the flip side, we have January 13.
It's a double-sided one.
Double-sided. Gotcha.
using our resources as well.
That's right. And this was about the heart safe designation, part-time officer appointment, and board updates.
Motion on that one.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0, please. Any board updates?
Well,
I'll be chugging along with EMS.
I thought we were doing a good job. I thought we were gonna get better coverage to the town. I learned something tonight that we're not, but, we are progressing. There's, resumes are being submitted now. We're trying to get the, questions that we're gonna be asking. There was a meeting last night of the 3 towns, EMTs, that, they had a little, pizza get-together to explain what was, ongoing. So Bobby and, the EMS directors made a presentation to those, the EMTs that wanted to go to the meeting last night, so that they, could buy in.
Yep.
You know, so they could learn what was actually going on, so.
There was an accelerated, there was a decision made to begin a rollout. Have some of those steps been taken?
Yes, Deerfield was gonna, put their paramedic service, in, and then there was, the EMS directors came to the booth and basically wondered, because the money is there, and, the whole thing was about providing the service to the communities. They're wondering if they could start up kind of on a limited basis now. And the boo kind of agreed with that, so they're in the process of putting everything together. And again, they still have to get the licensing, and there's equipment that has to be bought and all that kind of stuff, but that's progressing as well.
Good. So not necessarily sequential, meaning a director and then development and then a hiring and then a rollout,
I
but
think
a program that's getting its feet under it.
I think we learned, I think our original thoughts were too utopian.
Yep.
It was a nice,
Well, you gotta have a goal to strive for, and then you kinda ratchet it back, you know.
well,
Over-strive sometimes is a good thing.
and I think,
That's a good point.
and I guess if we were in the private sector, we probably could make things happen a lot quicker than in the public sector.
They raise a good point
The
also.
public sector has many roadblocks that get thrown in one's way.
It does. Democracy is never known as the most efficient form of government.
It's not even the best form, but the
But-
best one that we have.
That's right.
But yeah, so that's progressing nicely. That's, the boo was also under the realization that when we had talked to the, South Deerfield Fire District, that, they had kind of given us a 3-year window also, so we also now, besides getting us up and running, we're under no false impressions, but we have to find a permanent
home.
place also.
Right.
Yeah.
We
Now,
always kinda
and you
That's
know,
it.
Margaret was gone.
Right.
And when Margaret's gone, everything stops.
That's true.
Oh, stop.
We
That's
depend-
not true.
We actually do depend on Margaret to do a lot of work.
Oh,
so.
thanks.
That was one of the things that we kinda had known was kind of out on the horizon anyway, was the permanent location.
Yeah,
Oh,
permanent
Margaret's gonna be
location, they're gonna
gone.
have to roll right into that.
Yeah.
That ain't happening.
Yeah, right into real estate.
Yeah, so,
Definitely organization, right into real estate.
and the guy, you know, and working on the boo is kind of, the Board of Oversight is kind of a neat thing, because these guys are very, result-oriented, wanna get it done type of guy, so things, very efficient meetings, we talk for about, our meetings last about an hour.
Yep.
A lot of stuff gets done then, so it's pretty good.
Nice.
Do we need 3-phase power for the
We could.
EMS?
Big doors.
That's right.
Big doors. David, anything?
No, a little quiet right now.
That's not a bad thing.
No.
So there's a negotiation, police negotiations tomorrow morning, bright and early, 7:30. And then we go into this Mass Municipal Association conference, where there's a series of workshops and networking opportunities. So we'll come back on Monday with all kinds of great things to share with the town.
That's right.
If I could, Mr. Chair, I forgot the, Thursday night at Frontier, the superintendent of schools, Marty Barrett, had made arrangements with, Steve Kulik And select boards and finance committee members are all invited, as well as the public, of talk about school education funding. So Steve Kulik will be at Frontier sometime after 7 o'clock. I don't have the agenda in front, but he will be there to talk about spending and secondary schools.
Perfect, perfect. I give the superintendent credit for reaching out to the
Absolutely.
legislator
Good
as
thing.
well.
Plus, plus.
The only thing I will say is one thing on a technology note. We are sort of in the process of doing the website design and trying to get meetings set up for that and everything. But also as a general rule, if you have an attachment or a suspect email, if you even have the slightest doubt, do not open the email, immediately delete it, do not open the attachment. Even if it looks, if there's just, you have a gut instinct about it, don't do it.
That's such a good point. I've heard from a number of people today who have gotten calls from some, self-proclaimed credit agency wanting information. There's a whole lot of phishing and smishing and ishing going on right now. People have to be extremely acutely aware that they cannot, they should never give their personal information, any information, to a caller. They need to call their bank directly and find out if they're involved. I've been thinking of actually putting out, working with the chief to put out a Connect CTY on that, because it's become so prevalent right now. People are becoming victims more increasingly. So we've got to try to do something to get the word out.
You should, in general, you should never be giving that kind of information over the phone.
Never.
Just, it's not,
Right.
reputable places don't do that.
The other thing, Mr. Chair, if I could, is I did notice in the Franklin County Tech School that they're looking in their budget to have a resource officer. I think that's a very interesting addition to the budget, and I don't know how we talk about that.
Right.
So I don't know if Margaret could maybe contact the superintendent and or principal and or other towns, but if we're gonna add a armed guard, and our school in Sunderland right now has, 12, 13, 14 students, and I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but
Just a discussion we
you
need
should
to
have the discussion, and I think that if that's kind of a change, I don't know any other schools in our immediate area, except I think like Northampton maybe has a resource officer, maybe Greenfield does, I'm not sure. But to have someone talk to us about that, I think that having that discussion is,
From both a policy perspective, but also the fact that it's
There's a whole-
under the guise of policy and its budget impact.
well,
Two things. It's not just the budget.
Francis had a good point
Right.
when he was talking about how do you quantify adding a police officer.
Well, and also too, it's labeled a resource officer. If you just went out and asked the first 5 people you saw on the street, what is a resource officer, I guarantee you that at least half of them would not know what the real role is.
It's not law enforcement.
So like, that's one of the things, clarify right up front what that is. Because I bet you anything that if that's more clearly known, that would foster the discussion a lot more too. Either way, it's just.
And again, I think it's a conversation that should be had, and
Yep.
people should participate in that conversation.
Right, it shouldn't just sort of happen.
Right,
Without
it shouldn't just
discussion.
happen in,
Right.
and
Vote of
sometimes at regional schools, because they're many town, people don't look in the fine points of a budget. And that can be very easily, and conversation right now is gonna be a Montague police officer.
Right.
Well, should it be a Montague police officer, or should it be a sheriff? Should be the Franklin, should it be a member of the Franklin County Sheriff's Department?
Right, you could make an argument for like a lot of different places getting it from,
Sure, you
right?
could alternate
Exactly, right.
officers
Like,
from member
state police,
towns.
Sheriff, right.
And again,
Anything.
it's a conversation that probably, we should have, and I'm not, I have my thoughts, and again, we all know from most of the school shootings that, or any of the shootings, that most of the damage is done in the first 2 or 3 minutes.
Right.
So we know that. But again, things shouldn't catch, I think it's our, as, we need to get the information out so people aren't shocked when they find out about it.
Mhm.
Great
They should
point.
know, somehow they should know
We
about
should
it.
reach out to the superintendent's office.
And if they wanna be part of the conversation, that's fine. I think it's a good conversation to have.
No, I would agree, because you don't wanna have a parent find out because their student came home, you know, their kid came home and said, hey, did you know we've got an art garden school now?
Or
You know,
worse,
the-
or worse yet, I met the new guy.
Yeah, exactly, right, on the wrong
On
end
the
of
wrong
that,
end, exactly.
And you don't wanna have that pop up like that. No, you're right, it's a very important kind of
Correct. It's
discussion to
it's a
have.
good conversation.
I would agree.
Points. Good points. Maybe something we'll be talking about, or will be discussed at Frontier on Thursday.
Yes.
I'd be curious to see, and this is one of the things we just talked about at the conference, if something like that is discussed at that level too. I'd be interested to see, because surely we are not the only, municipality grappling with it. It's a national issue, and I'd be curious to see that, and also,
And size doesn't matter.
Right.
No.
no, it doesn't.
Not at all.
So, big schools, small schools.
You can maybe make an argument that it statistically may happen more, but it happens everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, you've got, the baseline is always there.
12
That doesn't matter.
12 by 20 schoolhouse in Amish country, Pennsylvania, 3
Yeah,
years ago.
yeah,
That's right, exactly.
yeah.
Right, it
12 by 20 schoolhouse.
Well,
the Amish.
locations are also varied too.
Yes.
Venues.
Right. And it goes back to sort of like one of the prior presentations we had there, here's what we're saying the national average is, but here's what we have realistically.
What is that? What's that Twain line? There's lies, damn lies, and statistics.
That's right.
That's funny.
What's that?
Yes, I am.
And the
Okay.
lawyers.
Margaret, anything you want to weigh in on?
Not at this point.
All right.
Back in the swing of things.
All right. Thanks
She's
so
just
much for
excited to be
FCAT.
back.
Thanks for making it a special night for us, coming in on Tuesday.
Motion.
Appreciate that. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0. If you can call us out at 8:30, please. Thank you, FCAT. We are done.
It's only 6:45.
Still, it was 6:45 a week ago.